Good to Mayid, good to Kivitzel. This is Gemara Eruvin Daf Samoch Aleph. Of course, the learning is Chos for Chaim Kanievsky, Shmei Yosef Chaim ben Pesha Miriam, as well as all our other Chaylim Bidemir ben Ikir Men Vavecham Chamita, Chaim ben Sar Tom Sivim Yized Dosar Bas Kent Basim Bas Chaysir Chaim Sarasi Yosel Bemindol Eliezer Peretz to Chevrolet Shalmi Bas Naomi Shavim Shechane Faldav ben Triva Daniel ben Chana Rezol Chaim Nachum ben Mindol Beser Sha'ar Chayli Yisrael. We pick it up in the bottom of a Samuch Amid Beis, closing out this wonderful parak. We pick it up in the bottom of the Amid Middle, discussing when an Eruv ends in the middle of a city. If you get the entire city, is the whole city considered Dalad Amos, or it goes just until the end of the 2,000 Amos? Amr, let's actually start a drop higher. Amr Rav Yeshua ben Levi, Hayamayde Duba, someone who's measuring and he comes, and calls him Midase B'Chatzi a year. And the Eruv ends smack in the middle of the city. Ein Layel a year. We learned all you get is until that point. That is where your Tchum ends. Let's say the Eruv goes and ends at the end of the city. Like we saw yesterday, the entire city is considered like one big Dalet Amos. Then you're going to measure your 2,000 Amos from that point and further. And you complete the rest. These are words of Nevi'is, words of prophecy. How do you know such a thing? How can you say that when it ends in the middle of the city, then you get just until that point? But when it ends at the end of the city, then you get the whole city. Mali calls him a chatzir, Mali calls him a seifir. Ask Rav Idi, what's the difference? Amar Rava, comes to Rava, Rava says, Rav Idi, what's bothering you? You're calling it Nevi'is, why? Tarvayu Taninu, they both learned in a Braisa. Anshi Ir Gedela Malchan, it's called Ir Ketayal. No. A Mishnah that we'll actually see in a few moments, that the residents of the larger city are allowed to walk throughout the entire smaller city. Moving along to Samach Aleph, Amar Aleph, Veinanchi Ir Ketana Malchan is called Ir Gedela. But the residents of the smaller city are not allowed to walk the entire larger city. My time, what's going on over here? We have two cities side by side. A smaller city and a larger city, and it says one you can walk the whole thing and one you cannot. What's the difference? My time says the Gemara, 2 lines down, Lam Yishon Dani calls me Dasan B'Chatzi Ir. Seemingly the reason is because one it finishes their measurement in the halfway through the city. Vani calls me Dasan B'Saifa Ir, and that's why you get the whole city. So Rav is bothered. Rav says to Rav Idi, I don't know what's bothering you. Seemingly it is a straight up Mishnah. Over here you see a picture that when you have the two cities, your left side is your larger city, your right side is your smaller city. And you see over here that depending on where it's finished, on your left side, the larger city, where does the Tchum end? That's the red on the bottom over here. The Tchum encompasses the entire smaller city. Therefore, the entire small city is considered Dalet Amos. Then you get another 996 Amos, meaning the remainder of your 2,000 Amos outside of that smaller city. Whereas in the reverse, the smaller city only gets until smack in the middle of the larger city because that's where the Tchum ends. So Rava says to Rav Idi, we see clearly that this was already taught in a Mishnah. What is bothering you? Says the Gemara, 4 lines down, Rav Idi, Anshi, Tani. Rav Idi had a different girsa, a different way of learning that Braisa, they're referring to people who Mukim La, Rav Idi learned it b'noising. That the case is bin noisein when you placed your Eruv there. There's 2 ways that we've seen many times of creating your Eruv Tchum. Either you could go and take your loaf of bread and take your bottle of wine and place it there to be kind of your shvisa, that's where your dwelling place is. Or you could physically go and sit down there when Shabbos begins. So it says Rav Idi, that Braisa, that Mishnah, when it said that you do not get the whole city, you only get until that point, that is bin noisein. That is when you put the wine there, that is when you put the bread there. Avol Maided Loi Tinan. But in the case of Maidid, when you're measuring, as you see Rashi directly across, and the Rashi says, "Avol Maidid Mechutz Le'ir Bali Ir Loi Tinan Midi Chalik Ben Kalsa V'Chatziyah L'Kalsa V'Seifa." When it comes to the case of Maidid, when it comes to the case of measuring, and the measurement ends halfway through the city, or the measurement ends in the whole city, that says Rav Idi, that's what I meant with different Nevi'is that we never learned. Says the Gemara of Eloi. Is that true about Tanan? We learned in the Mishnah. In this case of measuring that we learned about that we give him 2,000 that even if the end of the measurement ends in a cave, and then it goes until that point, wherever it ends inside the city, that is where you get until. So why are you telling me we never learned about a case of measuring? There's a clear Mishnah that says that when you get to 2,000 amos, it's where it ends, even if it's a smack in the middle of a cave. Says the Gemara, Soifa Ir Tzrichalei. It's coming to teach me a chiddush of Soifa Ir that when it ends at the edge of the city. That is the Loi Tanan. That case was not learned in the Mishnah, and that is the chiddush over here. That if when you're measuring 2,000 amos, it goes and ends smack at the end of the city, so that's going to be the chiddush. That's what Ravidi was saying is different Nevi'is, that in that case, since it ends at the very end of the city, you're going to get that whole city. That is the chiddush. Says the Gemara, that's the end of this discussion between Rav Idi and Rava. Omer Rav Nachman, mandatani inshi loy mishtabish, mandatani inshi loy mishtabish. So Rav Nachman, I mean the end of the discussion of Idi and Rava and their give and take. Now the Gemara is going to comment on that discussion. Says Rav Nachman, if you learned inchi, you're not mistaken. If you learned ein inchi, you're not mistaken. Now the Gemara will explain that basically both are correct versions, correct gersais of the Mishnah that we'll have soon. Because then you're learning that the case is when you place the Eruv down, you place the bottle of wine down in the other city, and that was the reason why there were different dinim that you only got where the 2,000 amos ended, etc. Why? Because the case will be referring to when you're measuring. Now let's fill in the blanks. The people of the larger city could walk throughout the smaller city. Now Rav Nachman comes along and he explains how this makes sense. What is that referring to? That the larger city can walk in the smaller city, but the smaller city cannot walk throughout the entire larger city. That is when you are measuring, and when it ends in the middle, it just goes until that point. Someone who is in the larger city, and he puts his ear in the smaller city, or vice versa, if he's in the smaller city. According to this version, the way the Gemara is learning, that when you place the Eruv, then you're koine shvisa in the entire city. Again, if it sounds counterintuitive, we'll see in the Gemara it could go both ways. So basically, the way the Gemara is learning right now is when I go and I take my bottle of wine, I take my loaf of bread, and I place it inside the other city, then automatically I'm kind of the entire city, and the whole city, I shouldn't say kind of the entire city, but the entire city is viewed as if it's one big dalet amos, and then my 2,000 amay tchum goes, including the city, and then whatever amount outside of that city that is left. And that is how we're explaining, but that the Chasuri Mechsra, that when does this price say that the larger city will be able to walk throughout the whole smaller city, is in a case where you placed, when you measured. That's when there will be a difference. That's the case where the larger city will be able to walk throughout the whole smaller city, but the smaller city will not be able to walk through the larger city. That's in the case where you're measuring, and it's small smack in the middle of the city. But in the case you actually took your Eruv and you placed it down there, then everyone agrees you will get the entire city. Amar Rav Yosef, Amar Rav Abba, Amar Rav Huna comes along, Rav Yosef, and he teaches us a new din. Says Rav Yosef, the name of Rav Abba, Amar Rav Huna, Irshi Yesheves al Sfasa Nachal. We have a city that is at the edge of a Nachal, at the edge of a river. Im Yesh Lefanel a Daka. If you have a Daka we had yesterday, Daka is this little thin wall that is how wide? Arba, that is 4 amos, that should say tall. You have a long 4 amma wall in front of this river. Then you measure from the edge of the river. You measure from the entrance of your house. As you see in this picture in front of you, you have a city. And you have this daka, which is this 4 amma tall wall that's blocking this river. Says the Gemara that if you have it, then you're going to measure from the edge of the river. If not, you're going to have to measure, as you see in this picture. If not, you're going to measure all the way back from the houses. So Abaye responds back to Rav Yosef, Daka Arba Amos Amrilon. Abaye, Daka Arba Amos Amrilon alone. You taught us that it's referring to 4 amos. My Shana, what's the difference? Mikol Daki da Alma da Arba'ah. That is 4 tfachim. Again, Arba'ah is generally tfachim, and Arba'ah is generally amos. Sorry for the times. that the Gemara breaks the rules. But it says, Abaye, where do we ever find all of a sudden that you're teaching me that's before Amos? Everyone, I'm sure, was bothered that in yesterday's discussion, whenever we discussed, we had that little door, we had that little wall, Machliks Vishenim, exactly how to learn over there. We kept on saying it's Arba, it's 4 Tfachim. So as a Bayit to Rav Yosef, why does this wall have to be 4 Amos tall? So Amar Le Rav Yosef responds, Hasam Le Be'isa Tashmishta, Hacha Be'isa Tashmishta. It has to do with context. What is the wall doing? In a normal case, you're not afraid to go walk past the wall, so therefore 4 Tfachim is enough. Over here, there's a raging river underneath. Therefore, it's only going to suffice if it is 4 Amos. Amar Rav Yosef comes on Rav Yosef and he says, Aminallah, from where do I know this? The Tanya we learned in the Brisa. Hitter Rabbi Shebnei Geder Yardin Lechamsan. The people of Geder could go down to a place called Chamsin, but the people in Chamsin cannot go down to a place in Geder. My time, what's the reason one could go to the other, but they can't go back and forth? Seemingly the reason is one built a wall and one didn't build a wall. And like you, Rabbi Yosef, just taught us that when we have a situation where there's some danger, if you build this wall, then that extends the edge of your city and you measure from that city. Therefore, you're going to be allowed to go in the next city. But if you don't build the wall, then not. Before we continue the Gemara, here's a nice visual everyone could use to in the picture exactly what's going on over here. Geder is on the top, Chamsin is on the bottom. Says the Gemara, since Geder built a wall, therefore when you measure the Tchum, it's going to include Chamsin, and you're going to be able to go all the way down to Chamsin. Whereas Chamsin does not have a wall, and therefore it's going to have to be measured from each house. Therefore they will not be able to go all the way back up to Geder. Says the Gemara, Kiasar Abdimi, and Abdimi said, Kiasar Abdimi, when Rav Dimi came, Omar, he said, Tatarugi mitatarugi lahu. No, it's a different case. It's not a regular case. The people of Geder, the people at the top, used to attack the people and assault them of the people at the bottom. The people at the top used to attack the people at the bottom. And my hitter. And therefore, what does it mean that he allowed the people at the top to walk to the bottom? Hitskin, that means that Rebbe made a takana. He made a decree that the people of Chamsin should not go there, even though they were theoretically allowed. The people of Geder were allowed to go down. The people of Chamsin were not allowed to go up. Why? Rebbe made a takana to protect those people of Chamsin so that the people of Geder do not attack them. Oh, Maishana, what's the reason he made this? Maishana Shabbos. What's the reason he made this Gzeira on Shabbos? The Shechris on Shabbos, and sometimes they drink too much, they get a little too wild. Therefore, he was afraid that they're going to attack them. As the Gemara, that's why Rabbi made this Gzeira. Ask the Gemara 1 second. Actually, you have Rashi over here at the bottom corner of the page who draws you a picture also to remind us that Geder is on top and Chamsin's at the bottom. Geder used to attack Chamsin. Says the Gemara 1 second, you just said that we made a gzeira that the people of Chamsin don't go up together. I don't understand. But the people of Geder, when they go down, they're going to attack them. Says the Gemara, an important rule. Kalva beloy, masya, a dog without a town, shiv shenin loy navach. The dog, when it's out of its town, does not bark for 7 years. When you're not in your natural habitat, you're not so powerful. And therefore, when the people of Geder leave their town, we're not afraid they're going to attack. But when the people of Chamsin come upstairs, we are afraid. Says Gemara, why are we afraid? The opposite, that the people of Chamsin, they're going to attack back. Says Gemara, the people of Chamsin were not subordinate, they were not, what is called, powerful enough to attack the people of Geder, even when they were not home in their cities. Rav Safra Amar, Ira Suki Kesha has a different terrace. The city was made like a rainbow, like that bow, Aviyai, and that's the reason why, we'll show a picture in a moment, that's the reason why certain parts of each city could go to the other one. One was a large city, one was a smaller city. Rav Kana Masni Achi, Rav Yumi Masni Achi, Rav Safra, Rav Dimar Chinna, Chana Marir Asuya, Yeshes Havai, Chana Marir Asuya, Chana Ranshi, Ketana Vanshi, Gedela, Havai. Different ways of learning up this brisa in order to explain why the people of Geder are allowed to go down to the people of Chamsin. The people of Chamsin are not allowed to go up to the people of Geder. You see over here in this picture, this is how Rashi learns that since the people of Gedder down below, they're made like a bow, and you see all the different numbers over here, that certain parts of the bow will be within 2,000 amos, certain parts will not be, and that is the reason why the people of Gedder from up top will be allowed to go down, because that's within the bow, whereas vice versa, from the edge of the people of Gedder over here will not be allowed to enter the city of Gedder up on top, and that is how the Gemara answers up this question. Moving along, says the Mishnah, Anshe Ir Gedela Malcha Naskir Kedana. This should hopefully sound familiar. This was the Mishnah that we were discussing at the top of the Amid. That people of the larger city are allowed to go into the people of the smaller city. Vanshir Kedana Malcha Naskol Ir Gedela. People of the smaller city go into the larger city. Ketzad, what's the case? This obviously, the way that the Mishnah itself explains itself leads itself to one of the opinions that we said before, Rav Yosef, that the people of the larger city, Nasan, they place their Eruv, Bir Ketana, Minasan as Bir Gedayla. Then Malachas Chula v'chutzla bayamama. That is what the Tanakama, which we'll see is Rav Meir, says, that we're talking about Nasan, that you place the Eruv, and that's when you can walk back and forth. All you get is 2,000 amos. Rav Akiva, Tanakama said to Rav Akiva, yeah, what are you talking about? You don't admit to me that when you place your eruv in the middle of a cave, all you get is a place for your eruv. Alpayim Amma. Amrulai. So Rav Akiva responded. Amrulai. I'm sorry. So Chum responded to Rav Akiva. Imasai. No, that's only when there's no people living there. In a cave, when there are no people living there, that's when you're going to be more limited. But when there's people living in the city, when you place your eruv there, you can walk the whole city. Says the Mishnah, comes out in the case of a cave, the inside of the cave is more kal, is more lenient. There are people living there than the top of the cave when no one is living there. In the case of measuring that you said you give 1,000 amish, that's even when the measurement ends inside the cave. Moving along to Samach Aleph Amud Beis, the final Amud of this fifth parak, the Gemara now will go and dissect and take apart and explain all the different cases of the Mishnah. Omar, Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, Shavas Be'ir Chareva. If someone was Shavas, if someone was kind of Shvisa, he started his Shabbos Be'ir Chareva in a desolate town, L'Rabbanan Malachas Kula V'chutz L'Apayim. According to the Rabbanan, he is allowed to walk the entire city, and outside of the city, 2,000 amos. What happens though if he doesn't actually dwell there? He's not there when Shabbos begins. He doesn't actually come to the Shvisa. Rather, he places his Eruv there in this desolate city. Then all he has is the place of his Eruv. He does not come to Shvisa in the whole city. From the fact, seemingly this price is saying, since it's the desolate city, you cannot be kind of the Shvisa just by placing a bottle of wine over there. Ella Alpayim Amma, rather all he gets is 1,000 amos. Rabbi Lazar Aimer comes along, Rabbi Lazar says, and he argues on Shmuel, Echad Shabbos, Echad Niach, Ma'alech Hezkula V'chutz L'Alpayim Amma. Rabbi Lazar argues, whether you actually are there, whether you put down your loaf of bread, you get the whole city, even if it's a desolate city, seemingly, and 2,000 amos outside of there. That is the machlekes of Lazar that's allowing you to get the whole city, even when it's uninhabited, even when it's chareva. And Shmuel that says no, that when it's chareva, it's only going to work if you yourself were kind of shvis there, but not if you did it via the loaf of bread. Meisvei asks the Gemara on Rav Lazar, Armel and Rav Akiva, quoting our Mishnah, they said, Rav Akiva said to the Rabbanan, lead you not moidim, but I says Ruva b'maro when you place the eruv in a cave. They only get from that area 2,000 amos. Amrulai, what did the Chacham respond? When is that? That's only in a cave where no one lives in a cave. So what do we see? We see from the Mishnah that in the case of Ein Ba Diurim, when there is no one that is there, my delay, the Chacham admit that you do not get the whole city, says the Gemara. And therefore, that's a question of Rav Lazar. So we see clearly, how could Rav Lazar say that when there's no one living there, you still get the whole city? We see clearly that Chachamim say no. When there's no one living there, you do not get the whole city. Answers the Gemara, my ain badirim. What does it mean that there's no one living there? No, it doesn't just mean there's no one living there. It means it's a cave. It's not an area which is fit, which is normal to live there. That's the reason why the Chacham admit that's one step even lower than what we're discussing, Rav Elazar. Rav Elazar is discussing a regular city. It's roi, it's fit for living there, just doesn't have people. That's the case Rav Elazar said is Chiddush, where you still are kind of the Shvisa. So the Gemara says, okay, go to answer. Tashima, let's try again. Says the Gemara, Raya to Shmuel, and again a question, Rav Elazar. Shabbos v'ir, if someone dwelt in the city, even if it's a large city like Antochia Bimaro, like the city of Antochia in the cave, I'm sorry, let's read that again properly. Even if it's large as Antochia, or if he was living in a cave, even if it's a tremendous cave, like the cave of Sidkiyo Melch Yehuda, you're allowed to walk the whole cave, the whole city, and 2,000 amas outside. Katani, what do we see? Dumya Demara, that it's a city similar to a cave. And of course, everyone is wondering, wait, why don't you equate it the other way? Stay tuned, the Gemara, that's going to be the answer. But again, the Gemara first tries to prove, why don't we say that it's an it's a city which is comparable to the Ma'ara, to the cave. Ma'ara, just like in the case of the cave, Chareva, it is desolate, no one is living there after the Chareva. So too, it's a city which is Chareva, is desolate. Vishavas, and what do the Brises say? That they actually live there. Seemingly, it's only in a case where they live there. But if you place your ear, it's not going to work. Says the Gemara, let's go process of elimination money. Who does this fit with? If you're going to tell me it's Rabbi Kiva, who cares if it's desolate or not? I feel Yeshiva Nami. Even if there are inhabitants that are there, placing your ear never works according to Rabbi Kiva. Elalav must be that they're Rabbanan. V'tayim adishavas. And the reason it doesn't work is because you're actually there. I'm sorry, v'tayim adishavas in. And the reason is because when you actually live there, that's when a yes works. But placing your ear does not work. So seemingly the Gemara has a question on Rav Elazar that we see that it's an ear which is daimet achareva, and we see that placing your ear does not work. Answers the Gemara like we anticipated. Loitema ear dumya demara. Don't say it's a city that's similar to the cave. Flip it around, opposite. Talema mara dumya the ear. Say it's a cave that's similar to the city. My ear, just like a city yeshiva. There are people who live there. Afmara yeshiva, referring to a cave that people live there. Rabbi Kiva, and we're going with the opinion of Rabbi Kiva. Damar ein lai makam eruvai ela alpayim ama. You had 2,000 amas. Uvishavas, but when you actually are there on the onset of Shabbos, mighty, then they admit. Says Gemara, 1 second. How can you tell me that it's a cave similar to a city, meaning that there are people living there? It says that it's similar to the cave of Sidkiyo Amelech. Answers the Gemara, Kimara Sitkio, V'lo Kimara Sitkio. It's sort of in between whether it's exactly like this cave of Sitkio. Kimara Sitkio is similar to the cave of Sitkio. Gedayla, it's a massive cave. V'lo Kimara Sitkio, Dilu also by Sitkio, Chareva. The point of the Gemara was the grave of Sitkio, no one lived there. It's Chareva. But in this case, Yeshiva, there are people that live there, and therefore there is no proof. Because the price is not conclusive, excuse me, whether we equate the city that's inhabited to the cave, which is uninhabited, or vice versa. Mar Yehuda, which was the place of a city, that they were placing the Eruv in the shul in a place called Agoivar. Amar Lahus, Rav Yehuda said to them, Gavui Beit Fei. Rav Yehuda said to them, move the Eruv further into this shul. You should get more area. Why are you placing the Eruvin over here? Eruvin. You're arguing with regard to Eruvin? Do you not worry about yourself with Rav Akiva? And as Rashi, as we close with the parak, explains, we know that we go with the Mekel over here. Rashi says, you're arguing the Chachamim, what are you doing? Eruvin, last the Chash Rav Akiva, the Kaim Lalach, that we're going to go with the Mekel, and therefore we're going to go 2,000 amas outside of the shul, regardless if the Eruv was placed at the beginning of the shul, the end of the shul. You're going to get the whole shul, and then 2,000 amas kedivri hamekel, a important rule to close off the parak. Halach kedivri hamekel, hajjalach ketzad ma'arvin, parak that took us through Sukkot. We should do a chazara on this wonderful fifth parak of Eruvin. Let's just create a Mirza Shem. We shall learn many more parakim together. Let's just make a yaschol. Let's just begin the sixth parak of Eruvin. Hadarim ma'akim b'chatzir. Moving along to halachas of Eruv chatzeiros. Halachas that we've been discussing that any time you have multiple people in a chatzir, the only way to create an Eruv chatzeiros is if you have one big shituf. If everyone partners together. So says the Mishnah, what happens if hadarim ma'akim b'chatzir? Let's say you have a chatzir, you have a Jew living there, and a guy living there. A common case, you go to a hotel and you're in one room and there's a guy in another room and you want to carry in the lobby. You want to carry in the lobby even though it's just a yachid. It's an indoor area. But what's the problem? The problem is there's a guy that has an ownership over here. Because either the guy owns the hotel or the guy is staying in another room. Says the Gemara, Hadara Makar B'chatzir, so it doesn't admit to Eruv, Hareza Iser Alav, you're not allowed to carry. Unless obviously we're going to see, rent the Rishus from the guy, etc. Says Rav Elazar ben Yaakov, no. It's not if there's one Jew and one guy, it has to be at least two Jews. Amar Rav Gamliel, there's a story of one Saduki that dealt with us and lived with us in a Mavi in Yerushalayim. Amar Lanu Abba, Ma'aravos, he was like Mavi actually Yotzi. Quickly take out the stuff before the Saduki goes and utilize the Mavi. V'yasar Alecha makes it Aser. Yuday Blush and Acher slightly different. Maru Vasar Chechem, quickly before Shabbos, clear out all your stuff so that the Saduki doesn't use the Eruv on Shabbos and Aser on you. We'll pick it up and actually read the Mishnah again.